In a sleepy Georgia suburb where everyone keeps to themselves, Mr. Darnell, an elderly black man with a quiet laugh and a green thumb, is known for tending lawns and fixing fences for free. But when a series of FBI raids rock nearby counties, a black single mother renting across from him starts noticing strange patterns: military-grade radio signals, unmarked vans, and a visitor who always parks 2 blocks away. After a child's drone accidentally films Mr. Darnell in a hidden shed with weapons, encrypted documents, and a locked case with old passports, the truth begins unraveling. He's not just a neighbor. He's a ghost from the 1980s COINTELPRO era, once hunted, then forgotten. And now someone's finally tracked him down. Before we uncover today's case, a quick reminder. If you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a single clue, twist, or breakthrough in the stories to come. Now, let's dive into the case. The sound of sprinklers always came before dawn. It was the kind of thing nobody noticed until something went missing. A dog, a garden tool, a lawn chair. By the time the neighborhood came alive with coffee pots and school buses, the lawns on Sycamore Lane were already dewed to perfection, green like golf turf and trimmed with near-military precision. And at the center of it all was Darnell Moss. 70-something, black, wore the same faded denim overalls every day, never said much past "morning now" or "you'll need help with that." He moved like clockwork. Hose coiled by 5:50, newspaper tucked under his arm by 6, no mail, no phone, no family, just his long, slow walks, like he was taking inventory of a world that no longer remembered him. But Kendra did. Not in the way the others did. Not the way Mr. Aldridge next door laughed at the old man's obsession with pruning azaleas, or the way the white kids whispered creepy grandpa vibes when they biked past his fence. No, Kendra noticed differently. From the porch of her rental unit across the street, with a baby monitor in one hand and student loan bills in the other, she watched everything. Her eyes were trained for patterns, for things that didn't sit right. Like the way he always avoided the front door when delivery drivers came, or how no one, not once, had ever parked in his driveway, even though a dented Ford truck sat idle in the garage, license plates long expired, or the fact that he got mail, but it never came from the USPS, always hand-delivered, always on Sundays, always from the same man in sunglasses, who never stayed longer than 60 seconds. Still, it wasn't until Malik lost his drone that Kendra felt her stomach twist. Her son, 9 years old and curious beyond reason, had launched his birthday drone high above the rooftops and watched it dip and spin toward Mr. Darnell's yard. It disappeared behind the camellia bushes. No one went to get it, not at first. They figured the old man would leave it on their doorstep like he did everything else: tennis balls, baseball gloves, even a church program from a stranger's mailbox once. But that didn't happen. 3 days passed. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't Darnell, it was the man with the sunglasses. "Drone's gone," he said, smiling like it was a joke. "Tell the boy to be more careful." Kendra stood there, frozen. She hadn't told anyone about the drone, not even her sister on FaceTime. That night, Malik whispered, "Mama, the drone sent footage to my iPad. Wanna see?" The screen was shaky, sunlight blurring the angles. The camera dove behind a tool shed, one she'd never noticed before. Not wooden, metal, painted green. It had no door, just a sliding panel that glitched open. The footage paused briefly on what looked like a rack of thick folders and maps pinned to a wall. Then one frame, just one, froze on a stack of long black cases. One had markings she didn't recognize. The final image before the drone went dark. Mr. Darnell reaching for the camera, but his eyes, sharp, alert, younger than they had any right to be, looked straight into the lens. Kendra didn't sleep that night, nor the next. On the third day, everything changed. She was walking Malik to school when she noticed them. 3 SUVs parked a block down, black-tinted glass. Not unusual in this city, but she felt it in her skin. Noticed how the men didn't check phones, didn't chat, how they scanned the neighborhood like it was a chessboard. By the time she got home, a helicopter was circling the far end of town. Just a dot in the sky at first, but it got louder, closer, like thunder with a mission. And Mr. Darnell? He was just there, in the garden, hose in hand, whistling, calm as always. But for the first time Kendra saw it, how his back never faced the street, how the way he held that hose was a little too perfect, his hands never fully relaxed, and how beneath the surface of that quiet smile was something else, not fear, preparation. The chopper didn't land. It hovered. Its blades tore through the peace of Sycamore Lane like a curse, shaking tree limbs and rattling porch furniture. People stepped out in robes and slippers, shielding their eyes from the spinning dust, murmuring in confusion. Mr. Aldridge squinted up at the sky. That military? Kendra didn't answer. Her eyes weren't on the helicopter. They were on Mr. Darnell. He hadn't moved, still standing at the edge of his lawn, holding that silver hose like a relic. Water still trickled from the nozzle, hitting the grass in rhythmic drops. But his head was tilted slightly to the side, listening, not with surprise, but recognition, like someone hearing an old song. Then came the vans. 3 of them, matte black, engine growls low and deliberate. No sirens, no flashing lights, just a slow, chilling glide down the block, stopping at Darnell's driveway like they'd rehearsed the route in their sleep. Kendra took a step back into her home, heart pounding. Her man in full tactical gear stepped out of the lead van. Then another, then 5 more. Unmarked uniforms, body armor, radios hissing static. They moved like a unit, disciplined, silent. She caught the insignia on one of their shoulders. Not local police, not even SWAT. Federal. Across the street, Malik's voice cracked through the tension. "Mama, they coming for him?" She hushed him and pulled him close, one hand gripping the edge of the door. They watched as the lead officer approached. "Mr. Darnell Moss?" the man shouted, amplified by a clipped radio mic. Darnell turned slowly. Let the hose fall. Kendra expected panic, a chase, something. But the old man just wiped his hands on a rag he pulled from his back pocket, walked to the porch steps, and sat. That's when he finally spoke, loud enough for all to hear. "Took y'all long enough." The agents closed in, forming a perimeter. "You are being detained under federal authority. Stand up slowly and keep your hands visible." Darnell chuckled. "Son, I was in Cuba before your daddy even learned to drive. You think this is the first perimeter I've seen?" The lead officer blinked, thrown for a second. "You have the right to remain silent." "Good," Darnell cut in. "Then maybe you'll shut up long enough to listen." They didn't. They swarmed. One agent cuffed him, another started pulling open the garden shed. Kendra held her breath, watching as the door was pried back with a crowbar. And there it was. Not tools, not fertilizer, folders, maps, radio equipment. Several long crates stamped in Russian. One sidewall held an old Polaroid photo, yellowed with age, of 3 young men standing in front of a burning car, fists raised. One of them was unmistakably Darnell, maybe 40 years younger but with the same eyes. Another photo showed a white senator shaking hands with a man in a balaclava, redacted notes scribbled in pen across the margin. The agents froze for a beat, overwhelmed by what they'd found. One of them muttered something into a mic. Kendra couldn't hear, but she saw the leader's jaw clench. This wasn't what they'd expected. By noon, Sycamore Lane was on lockdown. Neighbors whispered from windows, phones in hand. A camera crew from Channel 2 tried to breach the cordon, but was quickly waved off. Kids sat cross-legged in front yards like it was a movie shoot. And through it all, Darnell sat calmly on his porch, now guarded by 2 agents. Kendra hadn't moved from her window. She saw them bring in a laptop, saw one of the agents hook it to something inside the shed, saw the moment the screen lit up, and the man flinched. He turned and barked something into his comms. That's when Kendra's own phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to. She stepped into the hallway and whispered, "Hello?" The voice was old, crisp, familiar. "Miss Kendra Dawes, I believe we share a problem." She froze. "Who is this?" There was a pause, a slow breath. "Let's just say, I was supposed to be dead too." Static, then silence. The call ended. She stared at the phone, her heart pounding in her throat. Something bigger was happening, and somehow it was coming right through her front door. Across the street, Darnell turned his head, not toward the agents, toward her window. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just nodded once like he knew, like he was saying, "It's your move now." By dusk, Sycamore Lane looked like a scene from a spy film. The vans were still there. A cordoned radius stretched to the stop sign where the kids used to sell lemonade. Drones circled silently overhead, and a white tent had gone up over Darnell's yard, like someone was prepping for a field autopsy of the American dream. Inside her house, Kendra couldn't keep still. She paced with her arms crossed, occasionally glancing at the now muted TV where Channel 2's evening broadcast was already speculating. Longtime resident of this neighborhood, known only as Darnell Moss, was taken into custody today by a federal task force in what appears to be a multi-decade investigation. They didn't know. Nobody did. But Kendra had questions. And she knew deep down in her gut they weren't going to get answered on the 6 o'clock news, not when someone had called her, not when that someone used her full name, not when Darnell across the street in federal custody had nodded at her like she was already part of this puzzle. Her phone buzzed again, a text. No number, just a link. Drive, phxvault.net, shared, kdawes231. Password, malikmo321. She dropped the phone like it stung her. No one but her and her ex knew Malik's birthday. Not even her sister. Not even Facebook. She hesitated for 5 seconds before picking it back up. She turned off Wi-Fi, covered the camera with tape, sat down at her kitchen table and stared at the link for a long time. Then she typed the password with trembling fingers. The folder opened. Inside, 4 video files, 1 PDF. She clicked the PDF. Title, Operation Coldbranch Dissident Profiles, 1982. Subject, Moss, Darnell Alphonse, a.k.a. Red Echo, a.k.a. Frank Smith. Status, Priority Watch. Former asset turned liability. She blinked. Read the first line again, then the second. Subject was a founding member of the Panther Underground East faction. Presumed killed in 1991. Firebombing in Caracas. Multiple sightings over the last 30 years, discounted due to facial discrepancies and presumed falsified dental records. Infiltration suspected. Surveillance status reactivated 10/22/2011 due to intercepted radio signals tied to the Coldbranch archive. She stopped reading. The page went on for 8 more. Surveillance notes, grainy photos, notations in red. A hand-sketched map of what looked like their neighborhood, but 30 years ago, before it was gentrified, before the condos, before Sycamore Lane even had sidewalks. She clicked on the first video. It opened on a grainy security feed, a storage unit. Darnell, 10 years younger, beard streaked with gray, stood in frame, carefully opening a case. Inside was a leather-bound journal, 2 floppy disks, and what looked like a film reel. The voice on the tape wasn't Darnell's, it was a woman, young, urgent. If you're hearing this, that means they've activated the old protocols. You've got 3 days, maybe less. Get the archive out. Don't trust the Bureau. Don't trust anyone except the girl. Dawes, she's clean. Kendra hit pause. Her ears rang. She hit play again. She's just a kid now, but I made sure the records were altered. Foster placement in Atlanta, then Stone Mountain. She'll grow up without any noise around her name. By the time they notice, she'll be invisible. The voice cracked, like someone about to cry. She's my daughter. You tell her I had to disappear. You tell her it wasn't cowardice. It was the only way to keep her out of this. You tell her I did it for her. The screen flickered. Then, static. Kendra pushed away from the table so fast the chair scraped the floor. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Her heart was pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. She ran to the bathroom and splashed water on her face, looked in the mirror. The voice in the video, she didn't recognize it, but there was something in it, something in the timbre, the way her own voice cracked when she got upset. She stared at her reflection and for the first time wondered, was my whole life built on a lie? Outside, the chopper circled once more before fading into the night sky. Inside the white tent across the street, the agents were arguing. She could see their shadows through the canvas, 2 men gesturing wildly, one of them slamming a folder shut. Something had gone wrong. Then one of the men turned toward her house. He was on a phone now, pacing. She ducked. The hairs on her neck stood up. They knew, or at least they suspected. Later that night, a knock came at the door. Not loud, 3 short taps. She froze, looked through the peephole. Nobody. Another knock, this time from the back door. She moved like ice, barely breathing, stepping through the hall and peeking through the curtain. Still nothing. Then a paper slipped under the door. She waited. 10 seconds, then 20. No footsteps, no shadows. She picked up the note. 3 words, scrawled in black ink. He saved you. Special Agent Michael Truce wasn't supposed to be there. He was officially assigned to a domestic cybercrime task force in Virginia, white-collar fraud, offshore crypto laundering, nothing that ever involved boots on real ground. But when a 3 decades dormant file flagged his clearance portal under Coldbranch, eyes only, he drove 8 hours without asking his supervisor. He didn't even grab his badge. What he found on Sycamore Lane chilled him, not the hardware in the shed, not the quiet old man who looked bored while being surrounded by guns. What chilled him was the smell. A familiar chemical scent clinging to the corners of the garden shed, synthetic, lab-grade. He'd smelled it before in an op back in Kosovo. It was a trace of a specific adhesive used to seal files in microfilm containers, Cold War era. A material so specific that only 4 government agencies still used it, all of them black budget. Something wasn't right, and no one else on site seemed to know what they were really looking for. That afternoon, as the other agents catalogued files and prepped evidence for transport, Truce stood quietly by a folding table, staring at the open crates and exposed folders like he'd just stepped into a crime scene that had been staged 30 years too late. He flipped open one file labeled O.P. Gideon Branch ATL D19. Inside was a photograph. It was slightly bent at the corner. A young black woman in a military jacket with no insignia, laughing, holding a baby. She looked familiar. He turned the photo over, scribbled in faded blue ink, Dawes, L, cleared for placement, Ref, Aurora Protocol. Child, KD, do not record birth name, clearance sealed per field command. Truce blinked. KD. He stepped back, looked across the street, to the small brown house with the screened-in porch, the woman who hadn't come outside once all day, the one whose blinds were pulled half an inch open. He'd seen her name on the school files when he cross-referenced the address. Kendra Dawes, born 1991. No father listed. Mother presumed deceased in 1992 during a building collapse in Baltimore, classified as a gas explosion. Only now he knew better. The woman in the photo wasn't just a field operative. She was Kendra's mother. That night, Truce returned to his hotel and logged into a private terminal. He bypassed 5 layers of encryption and opened a tunnel into an outdated archive known as Echo Cache. It wasn't even supposed to exist anymore. But Truce had used it once in 2017 when a whistleblower slipped him partial coordinates tied to Coldbranch's decommissioned New Orleans station. He typed, query, Dawes, Lena, status, query, Moss, Darnell, Guardian Protocols. Query, Op Coldbranch Dawes KD activation status. The screen blinked, status, live, Guardian activated, Moss D. 06-15-2023. Target, Dawes, Kendra. Threat level, unknown. Surveillance suspended due to override signal. Source, redacted. Then a blinking red message appeared at the bottom of the screen. You are not alone in this system. Truce slammed the laptop shut. His hands were shaking. Somebody was watching. Somebody had let him in on purpose, or worse, somebody wanted him to know he was already part of it. The next morning, Truce didn't report to the command tent. He drove to a diner 5 miles out of town, left his phone in the glove compartment, sat at a booth facing the exit and waited. At 9:47 a.m., Kendra walked in. She didn't look surprised. She sat across from him in silence, her fingers curled tight around her purse strap. Truce spoke first. I know who you are. Kendra's voice was low. Then you know what happens next. I don't, Truce said, and I think I'm the only one who wants to. He slid the photo across the table. Kendra didn't touch it, just looked at the image, her mother alive, laughing, holding her as a baby. Tears gathered at the edges of her eyes but never fell. I've spent my entire life thinking she died in a freak accident, she said. Now I find out she was a ghost, with clearance. Truce leaned in. That old man across the street? He took the fall for all of them, buried their names, protected the archive. He was a walking firewall. She looked up. Why now? Why 30 years later? Truce lowered his voice. Because someone inside the system cracked it open. Not a leak, an activation. Someone's trying to resurrect Coldbranch. And whatever's in that archive, it ties to you, which means... Kendra finished the sentence for him. They'll come for me next. Suddenly, the server's cryptic message rang in both their heads. You are not alone. They weren't. Because across town, in a high-rise basement that didn't exist on any maps, another monitor lit up. A woman in a suit with a scar over her left eyebrow watched the diner feed in silence. She zoomed in on Kendra's face, tilted her head, then picked up a landline and dialed. Mum, she said, we've located the Dawes asset. Truce is with her. A pause. Then the woman nodded slowly. Yes, we'll initiate phase 2. The coffee on the diner table had gone cold. Outside, the small parking lot shimmered under the heat, but the booth Kendra sat in felt like ice. She hadn't spoken in 5 minutes. Neither had Truce. The weight between them was thick with names they couldn't say out loud. Her mother, the program, Coldbranch herself. When she finally spoke, her voice cracked in places. They made me think I was ordinary, like I was lucky to even be here, lucky to be alive. Truce nodded slowly. That's how you build the perfect sleeper. She turned to him. Am I a sleeper? No, he said. Then more quietly, not yet. They left the diner by separate exits. Kendra through the back kitchen door, slipping into Truce's rental car parked 2 blocks down. He exited through the front, nodding to a waitress who was pretending not to watch him. By the time they hit the highway, 2 unmarked cars were already trailing the diner. Inside Truce's car, Kendra sat still as stone, a small black duffel in her lap. She hadn't brought much, just her laptop, the USB stick with the drone footage, and Malik's school photo in a cracked frame. Her son was staying with her sister 2 hours north, tucked in a cabin with no internet and no cell signal. Safe, for now. Truce kept his eyes on the road. "We've got about 4 hours before they catch up," he said. "Less if they pull drones." "Where are we going?" "There's an old airfield just outside Tuskegee. Private strip. I've got a contact. Ex-military. Keeps a plane fueled on retainer." "You think we can outrun them in the air?" "No," he said, "but we can disappear for a little while." She leaned her head back against the seat. What happens when disappearing's not enough? The road wound through pine forest, the radio off, their silence a mutual agreement. But Kendra's mind raced. She remembered the note. "He saved you." And now she wondered, from what? Her mother hadn't died in that explosion. She'd vanished, faked it, left behind a baby and a closed casket. For what? A mission? A cover-up? Was Kendra the mission now? Truce broke the silence. She was one of the last, Lena Dawes, coded under Echo Spectre. She helped shut down 3 branches of Coldbranch from the inside, sabotaged files, burned names. "You talk like you knew her." "I didn't, but my father did." Kendra turned to him. He kept driving. He worked surveillance in Atlanta, 1988. Said he watched her walk into a courthouse with classified documents, then disappear from the system the next day. They wiped every trace of her. "You're telling me this now?" "I didn't connect it until I saw her photo." A quiet pause. Then he added, "She was legendary, a ghost with a conscience." They arrived at the strip by dusk. The hangar looked abandoned from the road, but inside a silver twin-prop plane was already humming low, its engine warm. A man in a fraying baseball cap nodded at Truce and handed him a folder. "Fuel for 1,000 miles. After that, it's anybody's guess." Kendra glanced around. "Where are we going?" Truce handed her a passport. It had her face, a different name, no birth date. Just an origin country, Trinidad. She looked at him. "You forged this?" "No," he said. "Your mother did, 27 years ago." They boarded fast. No flight plan, no lights, just open sky stretching westward and a tailwind that might buy them another few hours of breath. At 3,000 feet, Kendra finally spoke. "If I'm not the mission, why did they activate now?" Truce's eyes didn't leave the clouds. "Because someone's reopening Coldbranch from the inside, not just the files, the programs." "You mean they want to restart it?" "No," he said quietly. "They already have." Meanwhile, 1,200 miles away, in a data vault beneath DC, a woman sat before an array of monitors, all tuned to different feeds: news, satellite sweeps, financial records, birth registries. She zeroed in on a screen labeled Dawes K. Then another, Moss D, in transport. Then a third, Truce M, escaped protocol. The woman stood, adjusted the cuffs of her blazer and walked to a wall safe. Inside was a manila folder wrapped in plastic, labeled in faded black ink, Original Project Babylon. She placed it on the table and opened it. Inside, a list of names. Her finger stopped on the third line. Dawes Kendra, potential trigger host. She smiled without humor, then picked up the phone. "Begin stage 3, she said. "Wipe the Moss asset, and if Truce doesn't return by 0400, she paused. "Label him compromised." The federal holding facility wasn't listed on any maps. From the outside, it looked like a water treatment plant. Gray, uninviting, no signage. A single perimeter fence with barbed wire coiled tight like a snake in defense. Inside, the temperature was kept cold, deliberately so. Darnell Moss sat alone in interview room 4B, wrists shackled to a bolted table. The fluorescent light above him flickered every 9 seconds. He'd counted. They hadn't asked him anything for 6 hours. They were trying to make him feel forgotten. But he knew this game. He'd played it before, in Angola, in Berlin, in D.C., under a different name. The only difference now was the seal printed on the manila folder in front of him. Office of Strategic Legacy Enforcement, OSLE. The name was new, but the smell of fear in the room wasn't. At precisely 4:13 a.m., the door opened. She entered quietly. No introduction, no badge. Just a dark suit, heels that didn't make a sound, and a folder she carried like it was both weapon and truth. Darnell looked up and gave her the same look he gave to hydrangeas when they bloomed too early. "You're late," he said. She sat across from him, calm. "You were supposed to be erased in 92. Caracas. We found bone fragments. DNA match." He leaned back. "I gave him a finger. People do more for love." She opened the file. Photos. A still from the drone footage. A blurry image of a young woman in a hoodie. Kendra. A heat-mapped aerial shot of a farmhouse in Alabama. "You broke protocol," she said. "You broke containment." "No," he said. "I kept your disaster on ice. You're the ones reheating it." "You trained her," she said. "You activated her." He smiled faintly. "I gave her a garden and a chance. She's flagged now. You understand that, right?" His voice hardened. "She's not a threat." The woman tilted her head. "Not yet. But you know what she was designed to become. If you didn't, you'd never have hidden her." Darnell's fingers clenched beneath the table. "She's my goddaughter," he said quietly. "Her mother died cleaning up your mess. Lena gave her whole damn life making sure Kendra never touched this world. She was supposed to be a failsafe. And now you're trying to turn her into a weapon." The woman closed the file. "She has something we want. The only remaining link to the original Project Babylon archive." "You're digging up graves," Darnell said, his voice like gravel. "You think there's power in the bones, but that project nearly destroyed every field team we had. The human mind doesn't carry that kind of encryption without shattering." She stood. He smiled again. "You'll never get to her in time." The woman pressed her hand on the table. "You're assuming she'll run." "She won't." "No," she said coldly. "She'll come back. That's what daughters do." Then she leaned closer. "And when she does, we won't need you anymore." Later that morning, 2 agents entered the room. They carried no forms, no weapons visible. Darnell was unshackled. No explanation, no words. One agent handed him a black bag with no straps. Inside, a burner phone, a watch, and a sealed envelope with only one word scrawled in handwriting he hadn't seen in 3 decades. "Run." 20 minutes later, a fire alarm tripped in Sector C. In the confusion, no one noticed the maintenance door swing open in the back hallway. By the time security checked the external feeds, Darnell was already gone, blending into shadows behind an old freight terminal 3 miles away. Inside his jacket, he held the envelope tight. He didn't open it. Not yet. He just whispered to the night air, "Don't come home, Kendra. Don't trust the sky." At that same moment, 30,000 feet above Mississippi airspace, Kendra sat in the plane's cabin, knees drawn to her chest. Truce was asleep across from her, gun holstered under his coat. She reached into her bag, pulled out the photo of her mother again. Something about the way her mother held her in the image. It wasn't fear, it was urgency. A moment caught mid-run. She turned it over, and for the first time, noticed something etched faintly under the original ink, hidden in the shadow of the blue pen. A second message. "Key inside the music." Her heart skipped. She reached for her laptop. There was only one song she ever remembered hearing as a child, the lullaby her foster mother swore she hummed in her sleep before she ever spoke a word. A soft jazz piece. "Midnight Variations," She typed it into her computer. The file was still in her local media player, recorded years ago from an old cassette, converted digitally, but never shared, just a melody. She hit play, no lyrics, just notes, but halfway through, there it was, a beat off, a pattern, not musical, not accidental. She ran a frequency scan, a burst of low-frequency modulated signals, embedded in the background, coordinates. Her eyes widened. She wrote them down, cross-referenced with a digital map. The point landed somewhere deep in the Nevada desert, not near any military base, but close to a site marked as defunct, Coldbranch Archive, Site Echo 3. She looked at Truce. He was waking up. "Ivai, we're not flying west anymore," she said, gripping the coordinates like they were oxygen. "We're going into the desert." The Nevada sun was cruel, blistering without apology, baking the landscape into fractured silence. The rented jeep kicked up a storm of sand as it cut across a forgotten dirt road between two jagged ridgelines. No towns for 50 miles, no gas stations, no cell signal. Just Kendra, Truce, and the sound of wind rattling inside the vents. They were driving blind, guided only by the hand-sketched coordinates Kendra had pulled from the lullaby. A buried message inside a song her mother had left like a digital breadcrumb years before such things were even possible. She kept replaying the audio in her head. Not the melody, but the hidden data beneath it. She wasn't a spy. She wasn't a soldier. She was a single mother who used to work 2 jobs and hated checking voicemails, and now she was being hunted across the desert by a black-budget agency that thought she was born to be a weapon. "Still sure this is the place?" Truce asked, squinting ahead. Kendra stared at the GPS tracker she'd hacked together with local coordinates. "Dead sure." He smirked faintly. "Good, because we just passed the last mile marker for civilization." They reached the site an hour later. There was nothing, no fences, no towers, just open land and heat. But the elevation map said otherwise. Beneath their tires was a plateau, flat and unnatural. Satellite images showed a strange shadow pattern that didn't match the terrain, a square buried under sand. A facility. Kendra stepped out first. Her boots crunched on gravel. The wind pushed her hair back, and for a moment, she just listened. It wasn't until the third breath that she heard it. A hum. Low. Electrical. Constant. She dropped to one knee and brushed away dust near a rusted boulder. Her fingers struck something solid, metal, a panel, almost invisible beneath layers of dirt. Truce joined her, pulling out a pocket tool. They pried it open. Beneath it, a keypad. Old, analog, no biometric scanner, just 10 numbers glowing faintly orange in the desert glare. Kendra hesitated, then typed 0321, her son's birthday. Nothing. She exhaled, tried again, 1987, her own birth year. Still nothing. Truce looked at her. "Try the song title." She paused, typed 6283, the chord pattern from Midnight Variations. The keypad blinked, then turned green. The sand beneath them shifted with a mechanical whine. Something massive began to move, stones splitting apart to reveal a staircase descending into darkness. Cold air blasted upward, heavy with the scent of steel, oil, and something older. Decay. They descended in silence, flashlights sweeping across dust-coated walls. The stairs led them down 5 levels. Each floor was littered with crumbling remains, molded folders, shattered screens, desks flipped as if in a hurry. No power, no sounds, except the occasional creak of old ductwork above. "This place was evacuated fast," Truce muttered, like someone pulled the plug mid-operation. They reached a corridor marked Archive Node B. A blast door was slightly ajar. Inside, unlike the rest of the bunker, the room was untouched, perfectly preserved, walls lined with file cabinets, lockers with fingerprints still frozen in dust. A massive console at the center blinked weakly, backup power barely sustaining it. Kendra stepped toward it. A handwritten note was taped to the main console screen. 3 words: "Kendra, don't trust him." Her throat tightened. The handwriting was her mother's. She turned to Truce. He had gone still. "Kendra," he said carefully, "don't move." Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" He didn't answer. He reached inside his coat, pulled out a small transponder and tossed it on the ground. "Tracker," he said. "They activated it the moment we left Georgia airspace. I disabled it an hour ago." Her hands curled into fists. "You should have told me. I didn't know who to trust, not even myself. They gave me a shadow assignment months ago, said it was dormant, just in case you ever came online." Kendra stared at the console. The screen flickered, waiting for a code. She ignored it. Her fingers found a nearby locker marked Dawes, Spectre class. Inside, a field journal, a cassette, and a revolver wrapped in cloth. The initials LD carved into the handle. Above them, miles of desert cracked open as rotor blades descended from a horizon of fire. A convoy of black trucks rolled fast across the sand, leaving no tire marks behind. Inside one of the lead vehicles, the woman with the scar pressed a finger to her earpiece. "She's found Echo 3. Her eyes glinted, sealed the sight, no one in or out. Underground, Kendra stared at the revolver in her hands. The last message from her mother had been clear: don't trust him. And yet, Truce had risked everything, saved her, carried her across a line he was never supposed to cross. She looked up. "Are you still working for them?" His jaw tensed. "Not anymore." She didn't smile. She just slid the journal into her bag and cocked the revolver once. "Good," she said, "because they're coming." They came just before dawn. No sirens, no war cries, just the soft chop of rotor blades and the glint of black boots dropping into the dust. Above ground, the Nevada sky was bleeding from night to morning, and in that silence, the facility known as Echo 3, buried beneath 30 years of lies, came alive one final time. Inside its core chamber, Kendra stood at the center console with the revolver beside her, and her mother's journal open across her arm. The tape from the locker had already finished playing once. She rewound it and let it spin again. "If you've made it here, then the archive still breathes. I tried to kill it. God knows I tried. But Coldbranch was never a place. It was a design. And you, baby girl, you were never supposed to carry it." The voice cracked. "But they always find a way to trace what's supposed to be erased." Kendra looked up. Truce was at the blast door, his weapon drawn, listening to every click in the corridor beyond. He'd reprogrammed the fallback security. They had maybe 8 minutes before the perimeter was breached. Or 5. He turned to her. "They'll storm the central hall first. If we're still here—" "I'm not leaving it behind," Kendra said. He nodded. "Then we burn it." They moved fast. She activated the old purge protocol buried in her mother's handwritten override code. "Doors, 7 Spectre X-ray." A screen popped up. "Delete all physical and digital archives. Are you sure?" She hesitated. This was more than just evidence, it was truth. A blood map of betrayals, black-budget experiments, coerced births, and redacted fates. It was also a roadmap for anyone who wanted to build the monster back again. She pressed yes. The screen dimmed. A red light began to pulse. "Archive destruction initiated, 0752 EST. In the distance, boots thundered down steel hallways. Explosives blew through upper entry points. Gas seeped through air shafts. Truce turned toward her, coughing. "They're flooding us, trying to suffocate the data out." Kendra grabbed the revolver and the photo of her mother and ran. They reached the emergency shaft just as the flames began to lick through the floor panels. Above them, metal groaned. The sky, if they ever saw it again, was somewhere past 100 feet of concrete and rebar. Truce keyed in the emergency ladder sequence. The wall split open. "No elevator?" Kendra asked. He grinned. "What's the fun in that?" They climbed like their lungs were on fire. Smoke chased them, then the sound of gunfire. Then, nothing. Silence. They burst through the last hatch and collapsed on the dirt outside, coughing, burned, and blinking against the morning light. The desert around them was still. Then, beneath their backs, the ground began to tremble. A low vibration. Then, a deep boom. Like the earth was letting go of a secret it had held too long, Echo 3 collapsed inward. Dust shot 50 feet into the air, followed by a plume of ash and debris, and then silence again. Kendra sat up. Her hands were black with soot, her throat raw, but her eyes clear. "What now?" Truce asked, slumped beside her. She looked down at the revolver in her lap. The initials LD still carved into the grip, the final message her mother had ever left. "You were born into something ugly, but you do not have to carry it forward. Leave them nothing, not even your name." Kendra took the revolver, opened the chamber, removed each bullet and buried them in the sand, then tossed the gun into the crater behind them. She stood. "I'm done running," she said, "but I'm not going home either." 2 weeks later, the federal task force officially declared the Nevada explosion a natural gas pocket detonation. No names were released, no suspects listed. Darnell Moss's status remained unknown. Michael Truce was marked killed in action by a rogue explosion in an abandoned bunker. And Kendra Dawes? She disappeared. But sometimes, if you look close, photos show up on encrypted forums. A woman with a quiet face and watchful eyes, helping refugees across digital firewalls, dumping black market archives, crashing corrupt government auctions with buried Coldbranch remnants. They call her a myth. Some say she's the last spectre, others say she's her mother reborn. But those who knew her name, they never say it out loud. They just whisper, "She was meant to be a weapon, but she chose to be the firewall." The end. This story wasn't just about one case. It was about how quickly truth can vanish when assumptions replace evidence, and how unchecked authority becomes a weapon instead of a shield. It was about fear, how it twists judgment, silences witnesses, and turns policy into harm. But more than anything, it was about dignity and the fight to hold on to it. For every family who never got the apology, for every name that was buried under suspicion instead of cleared by justice, for every child forced to grow up the moment someone else decided they looked guilty. So if this story made you feel something, don't let it end with sympathy. Let it push you to ask harder questions, to challenge what's hidden, and to care before the sirens start. You don't need a badge to speak the truth. You just need to know when silence becomes complicated. If this story spoke to you, like, share, and comment. Because conversations lead to awareness. And awareness? That's where justice begins.